Data management encompasses the initial task of creating data, editing to correct errors, identifying missing values, and adding internal documentations such as variable or value labels. It also encompasses many other jobs required by ongoing projects such as separating, combining, or collapsing data sets, and even converting variable types or creating new variables through algebraic or logic expressions. When data management tasks become very repetitive and complex, Stata programmers or users can write their own programs to automate the process. Although Stata is known for its analytical capabilities, it also has the power of doing effective and rigorous data management activities. In today's video, I am going to show you the basic commands that you can use as a researcher or a thesis student to perform your data management activities efficiently. Let us go and check it out. So, welcome to today's lecture. Today's lecture is titled Data Management Part 1, where I am going to introduce you to some of the basic commands that you will need as a researcher for your data management activities. This means that in the upcoming week, I will release another video on the Part 2 of this particular lecture, where I am going to go into much details of data management activities, just to give you a hands-on practical experience of how you can perform data management activity in Stata. So in today's lecture, I'm going to use a data which is already stored in this software package so that we can have a first-hand practical experience of how we can use certain basic commands to do our data management in our line of research work. And to start, I'm going to first of all display most of the data set or some of the data sets that are stored in the software package. Then we can choose one out of those list of data sets for our work today. And so to do that, I start by typing the command sys use directory, and I press my enter key. So these are the data sets that we have, or these are some of the data sets that has been stored in the software, and I am much interested in using this data set whenever I am giving a lecture on data management, because it contains a lot of information or a lot of variables or the type of variables that I need to demonstrate the commands that I introduce to my viewers or my trainees for the very first time that I introduce a data management class. In other words, the data management part 1 class. And so I call in this data once again by first copying the data set or the name of the data set. So you can copy, just right click on your, and your computer, and then just copy. Then when you come here, you type sys use, this time not directory, but you just paste the name of the data set that you just copied, and you press the enter key. So you can see that the data set has been loaded into the software, and therefore you can see variable names and their respective labels or descriptions. Okay, so once we have our data set loaded into the software, we first of all begin by trying to use the command describe. The command describe, what does it do? What the command describe does is that it first of all gives you a quick explanation or description of the variables in the memory or of the variables in your data set. And so to demonstrate that, I type the command describe. Remember, in Stata, command names are case sensitive and spelling sensitive, and so whenever you are typing a command name, you have to be very careful with the spelling as well as the cases that you use. Most of Stata commands are in lower cases, and therefore whenever you are typing you have to use lower cases. And so I have typed my describe command and I just hit my enter key, and this is the output that we see or we have on our screen after instructing Stata to give us a description of the data set or of the variables in our data set. And so just to go through the results that we have or the output we have on our screen, the top here just give us a brief or a general description of the data set itself. So you can see that the number of observation is 2,246. Others may call it sample or cases. It is 2,000. The total number is 2,246 as we see on the screen. And the number of variables we have in our data set are also 17 or is 17. And we can confirm this by just quickly counting the variables. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. So that is what is confirmed here. We have 17 variables. I will immediately after discussing this result with you, I will just use a command to confirm the total number of sample or observations we are seeing on the screen as well. Now, when you come here, this is the size. So in terms of space on your machine, this data set is actually taking this amount of space on your machine as far as the size of the data set is concerned. And this is a brief explanation or description of the data set that we have. You can call it the name of the data set. The date on which the data set was actually created, including the time, is also displayed here. And what is in the bracket here is notifying us that we have some note attached to the data set that we are using. Later on in the lecture, I will use a command to query the data, query for the note that is attached. Then Stata will actually pull out the note attached to the data set and then show it to us for us to actually know what the note is about. Most importantly about this result are the information we have here. If you look at this column, it is we have the variable name, where you see all the names of the variables in our data set listed here, just as you see them at the variables window. So you could see that our first variable, the first variable in the data set is ID code, age, up through to the tenant. When you come here, this column talks about the story type, and don't worry, I'm not going to talk about it in this video. In one of my subsequent videos, I will actually specifically talk about story types and how important they are in terms of managing your disk space and your memory of your machine more efficiently. The display format, again, I will talk about it later on. And this part, value label, I'm going to hold on to that because it's part of what we are going to do today. And when I get there, I will give you detailed explanation of that. But let's look at this column as well. We have the variable label. And with the variable label, you can see that every variable has a quick or a brief information about, trying to explain what each variable in our data set stands for. And so if you take a look at age, for instance, you will see that the name age doesn't speak anything, but if you come to the variable label, it gives you an explanation that we have ages in current years. So here we are talking about age in current years of our respondent. If you come to grade, the name grade, for instance, then the variable name grade, for instance, it's kind of vague. It doesn't tell anything. However, if you come to the variable label, you see that it is briefly explained for us to understand what actually the name variable grade stands for. And so here, looking at this column, it is telling us that we have current grade completed. So that is what the variable grade seeks to stand for or measure. So it runs through like that for all the variables. Remember, I told you I'm just going to give you a quick command for confirming this, and the command is count. Just count and press enter. So you see that it is telling you that the total sample we have in the data set is 2246, exactly stated here after we issue the command count. Okay, let's go back to our command describe as we were talking about. The command describe, as I told you, has presented a brief and detailed description of all the variables in the data set. So that is what we see here. But the point is, assuming you have a large data set with lots of variables running into hundreds and into thousands, are you going to use describe in general form like this to describe all the variables? What if you are not interested in describing all the variables, but you are interested in particular variables? Stata, in this sense, gives you the room to actually select some few variables of your choice and query the system or ask Stata to give you a detailed and brief description of these variables for you. And so to do that, or to demonstrate that, I type again describe, and this time I don't just leave it general like that, but I select variables of interest. So for instance, if I am assuming I'm interested in age, race, married and never married, I want Stata to give me a brief description of these few selected variables. So I type my command describe, and then I select these variables that I am interested, and then after that I hit my enter key. So you see we have the results displayed here, just giving us the brief description of the variables that we selected. And this is very handy for us to actually handle, so that we don't scroll through series or several variables after we have described all of them, just to have a look at the few variables that we are interested in. One more thing about describe is that you can also abbreviate it. In Stata, there is a room for you to use the abbreviated form of commands, just like what I'm going to show you. And so if you look at describe, there you can shorten it using the first three letters, the first one letter, or even the first two letters, just to abbreviate it. And Stata is going to give you the same result as it has been giving you when we use the full spelling of the command describe. And so to once again demonstrate that, I just type describe DE. Let me first of all use the first three letters of the name of the command describe, and I press enter. You see that the results I had by generally asking the system to give me a description of the data set and its variables has been reproduced. So it means that in the mind of the software, it recognizes the first three letters of the command describe and gives us the same result as when we typed the full name of the command describe. Again, I can also use the first two letters, just DE, and I press enter. It's gonna give me the same result. So once again, Stata understands or recognizes the first two letters as to mean describe, or as to mean the command describe. Now let me finally use the first letter to abbreviate the command describe, and once again I have the same result. So whenever you want to use describe, you can either type the full name of the command describe, or use the first three letters, or the first two letters, or even the first letter, and Stata will understand what you are trying to ask it to perform for you. Again, with these abbreviations, you can still also select few variables of interest and use them for your work, or use them to instruct Stata to give you description or describe those few variables that you might have been interested in getting information about, and Stata will perform exactly the same task for you. Now, to get more information about the command describe that I have introduced to you, you can type here help and then the command name describe. You can also use the abbreviated form and it will give you the same result. So when you type it, this is a help window or a help file kept in the memory of Stata, giving you information or all the information you need about the command describe. And so when you look at this is the syntax, or we call it the command line. People call it the command line that you use, just as we actually use to initiate the command. And interestingly, describe has several options. It is not just describe, but you can also add certain choices or options for it to perform describe or describe the data in a special or in a unique way for you, just as you want it. For instance, we have simple, the option simple, which means that display only variable names. I'm gonna use that one right now. And then we also have shorts, which can be abbreviated using S. Whenever you see a name with underline, whenever you see a name, when you come here, you see some option names or command names, just like what I am seeing, what I'm showing you under describe, the command name describe. You see that the D is underlined. It means that Stata recognizes that if you just type D. Again, when you come here, the option simple, if you just type SI, Stata recognizes that you are referring to the option simple. Likewise, the short, if you just type S, Stata recognizes that you are referring to the option short. And so for the short, it also talks about display only general information. So let's go back to the main screen and reinitiate the describe command, but this time ask it to perform the description or give us the description in a very unique way according to the options that we specify. So when you come here, if you call for describe or a description of the data set and you attach the option SI, which stands for simple, just as it defined or just as it was defined in the help window, you will see that the sample just gives you the list of the variables, all the variables, because I didn't select specific variables that I am interested. So it gives you just the list of all the variables that you need in the or all the variables that you have in your data set. Again, I can do that by just selecting some few variables that I am interested in. So I just type D, and for instance, I select age, race, married, never married, and grade. I think this is enough. And then I just bring my comma. Take note of this. In Stata, whenever you want to introduce an option to a command line, first of all, end the command line with a comma before you introduce the option that you want to introduce. Otherwise, Stata sees that option as part of the variable list. And so when it happens like that, you confuse the software, and therefore the software will just report an error message to you. And so to avoid you having an error, or committing an error in your line or in your quest to initiate a command with an option, first of all, pick or type the command name and then list all the variables if you need to list variables. And after that, end the list of the variables. If you need to select variables, end the list of the variables with a comma before you introduce the option. So now you can see that I have ended the list of variables with a comma, and so I can introduce my option sample and press enter. So because over here I selected just age, race, married, never married, grade, okay, these are the variables that I just selected. You can see that Stata has listed them here for me. Okay, has selected or has listed them here for me, just the variables that I selected. So that is what the simple option and the command describe does. Let's also implement the short. The short, as the definition, as you saw in the help window, it only gives you a general information of the data set, of the entire data set. And so I just type describe and then introduce S, and you will see that this long table, which consists of the list of variables and their storage types, display, value label, and variable label, are not here. It only gives you what is at the top here. Remember, I told you that this is the general information about the data set. So when you come here, you have the same information. Okay, when you attach short to the command describe, you get a general description of the entire data set that you have in the memory of the software. So that is basically what describe does. Now today, my second command that I want to introduce you to is edit. Now, edit command does something which is very simple. What it does is that the moment you initiate the command edit, Stata opens a spreadsheet window which contains the variables and their respective contents per observation, or for each observation or sample in your data set. And so I will first of all demonstrate that by first showing you on my screen. I am using Mac, but in Windows, the display of these buttons vary slightly. So you just have to use your mouse to your cursor to point on each of the buttons until you see data editor edit, just as you see on my screen. And so when you click on that button, you will see that the spreadsheet pops up. And this time, because we have data sets in the memory of the software, you see variable names, and some observations or cases over here. So just as you are seeing, there are variables and their respective content for each observation or sample in your data set. Now the sample or observations are in rows. So just as I am highlighting with my mouse or my cursor, so the number 1 stands for the first case or the first sample, or some people call it respondent, the first respondent in your data set. The second one represents the second respondent up to the last respondent in your data set. Now, variable names are displayed in columns. So the columns on the spreadsheet represent variables. So for example, what I have highlighted is college grade. So that is the variable, and it is for this column. If you want to know about marital status, you come here and then you select, and that is the variable marital status. So that is what edit does. One unique thing also edit does is that over here you can type in, you can change, you can type in. Okay, so let me go back and retype my 0. So I had 0 here, and I was having another 0 here. So you can actually do some form of editing whenever you initiate or issue the command data editor or data editor edit. Whenever you issue that, the spreadsheet that comes up, you can actually do some sort of editing as far as your data set is concerned. Now you can also, assuming assuming we had no data sets in the memory of our software, and so we just initiate or issue the command edit, there you would have seen just a blank spreadsheet like this, just empty, because there's no data in the memory of the software. So you would have seen just a blank spreadsheet. But because we have data in the memory of the software, here we see, or we have some content to observe or to explore. So this is just about using the pointer to click on the data editor button. But today I am here to introduce to you a command you can use to perform the same task, or to call for that spreadsheet and then do whatever editing you want to do in your data set. And so the command that you can use to call for the data editor spreadsheet is just by typing edit, and you press your enter key, you see the same spreadsheet that we were just playing with some few seconds ago pops up again. And like I said, you can just edit the content. You can make some changes to the content. You can make some changes to the content. So that is what you see here as well. Okay, so that is what the data editor edit does. One more thing I would like to introduce to you before I go back to the main screen is that okay, let's go back, and then I will demonstrate that to you after I have listed some variables. So just like the describe command over here, or with the command edit, you can also select some few variables you are interested. This is because, in fact, it is very important for the command to give you the room to select some few variables, because sometimes as a researcher, like I said, you can be having a very large data set at your disposal, and therefore it will be very difficult if the command that you are using doesn't give you the room to choose particular variables of interest that you want to explore, and it only restricts you to just list all of them and be scrolling over and over before you can see those variables of interest. Then it's going to make your work very, very inefficient. And therefore, one of the powerful features of Stata is that for commands like these, it gives you the room, to select some few variables of interest to you as a researcher. So if I can type edit and select some few variables like age, race, married, and then marital status. I don't know why I'm so fascinated about married and never married. Okay, so this is what we have here. Then I press my enter key. So you see that this time the spreadsheet came out or popped up with only these few variables with their respective content for each observation or case in our data set. So if I want to add more variables, I just come here and be checking the boxes here, and you will see that they will be appearing as well on the spreadsheet. If I'm not interested in some variables like I'm doing, I just uncheck the boxes. So you don't need to, assuming after selecting these variables, you really forgot one variable, or you are interested in adding more variables just for you to explore or observe the trend in some responses. You just don't go back to the main screen and add the names of those variables to your command line. You can just be doing them straightforward or straight ahead from here by just checking the boxes. And if you are not interested, just as I said, you just be unchecking them, and then you go your way. Okay, one last thing about edit is that you can also abbreviate it using the first two letters of the name edit. So here I type ed and I press enter. It gives me the same result as when I used the full name of the command edit without specifying specific variables. It has brought out the spreadsheet that contains all the variables and their respective content for each observation. With the same abbreviation, I can also select some few variables, and so I call it here the essence of this window. Remember, if you have not watched my first video, please go and check it or go and watch it. You know I gave a detailed explanation of what this window or all the windows in Stata, what they actually offer to you, the user of the software. So here in that video I said it is called the review window or the command review window, and it keeps a record of all the commands that you'll be using in your work, so that when you want to repeat some exercise, you don't have to retype them, you just come and select them. So just as I've done, I've selected this command and I just want to delete the IT because I want to use the abbreviated form of the command edit with some few selected variables that are of interest to me. And therefore, after doing that, I press my enter key, and once again you get the same result. Remember, I said you can edit the content of your data set whenever you use the edit command, and you can also select more variables by checking the boxes here. If you are not interested in them, you just uncheck them and you go your way. Okay, let me also introduce you to a sister command of edit called browse. Now, browse performs the same exercise or does the same thing just as what editor or edit does. But the only difference is that under the browse, you cannot change the content. You cannot edit the content of your data set. So just as the name means, you just have to browse through the data by just using your eye to scan through the data. However, you cannot make any changes. Aside this unique feature or characteristics of the command browse, all other functions it performs or activities it performs are the same as that of data editor edit. And so to demonstrate the use of the browse command, I just type the word browse all in lower cases and I press my enter key. So you see it gives me the same spreadsheet. However, just as I said some few seconds ago, you cannot change. So you can hear some sound from my machine when I made an attempt to change or to edit the content. This browse or this command doesn't actually want to allow me or doesn't allow me to make changes to my data because of its unique feature of not allowing you to make changes to your data set. So whenever you want to just browse through the data set, you can use this one. But whenever you want to work from the spreadsheet, whenever you want to work from the spreadsheet and at the same time make changes to the content of your data, then it is ideal for you to rely on the command edit rather than the browse. Okay, so once again over here I can select some few variables. So browse and I press enter. It performs the same function just as I said. And if you want to also select some more variables, you can do that by checking these boxes. Otherwise, you uncheck them to remove the variables that you really don't want to see them on the spreadsheet at this stage. Okay, once again, you can also abbreviate this command by just using br, and then you press enter and you have the same results. Okay, later on in my subsequent videos or in the part 2 of data management class, I will introduce what is called the if condition and then the in condition. Okay, just to filter, because the power of the command browse or edit is to filter or pull some or to pull some subsection of the data set that you have. If you have the data set, if you have a data set and you want to pull out some small subsection of the data set of interest to you, you can just use either edit or browse and then attach the if condition or the in condition, and Stata will do exactly that for you. Okay, let's move on to our next command, and the next command that I am going to introduce to you is actually called compress. So assuming you have a data set and the data set is so large and therefore it is taking a larger portion of your computer's memory. As a result, whenever you issue a command for Stata to perform an activity for you, it takes a lot of time before the result actually comes out, because lots of your memory, of the memory of your machine, is being consumed or being utilized by the data set itself. And so in Stata, there has been a very innovative way to manage the size of the memory that your data set can actually take from your computer. And you can do that by using the command compress. So the command compress actually helps you to efficiently manage the memory of your machine by reducing the storage or by changing the storage type of each of the variables in the data set into a smaller size so that you can actually have enough computer memory to do your data work. So to demonstrate the compress command, I just type the word compress, again lower case or lowercase, and then I press my enter key, and wow, so here it is telling me that there is no amount of memory saved. Reason being that for this command to be able to save some amount of memory for you, the memory which is being consumed by your data must exceed a certain limit. Once you are within that limit, whenever you use this command, you get the kind of result I am having, which means that at this stage, this data set is not that much huge, or it is not taking any larger portion of my computer's memory, and therefore I am free to work with it as it is. But assuming the amount of memory the data I have is taken from my computer exceeds the optimal limit, then after issuing the command compress, what Stata would have done is that it will actually reduce the story type of each of the variables in the data set, just to efficiently help me manage the size of my computer memory so that I can do an effective job by saving time and energy in line of my data work. So that is what the compress command does. I'm gonna move you to another command called label. And over here, I'm going to spend quite some few time on that, because under label, there are so many important things that you can, or important things that you can use the command label to do. In fact, it is a very powerful command whenever you are doing data management or even data analysis. And so to demonstrate that, I'm going to take them one by one and then demonstrate them for you to actually have an idea of how each and every one of them work. So I'm going to start by first of all looking at label variable. Label variable. So can you see these descriptions over here? If you take race, they are given a description race. It is still vague. I don't really understand what this race stands for. Okay, or I don't know how it was measured, what it really stands for, because you can choose to use any word to represent the name of a variable. And so to make life easier for the users of your data set, you have to give a meaningful brief description, okay, as a variable label for each of the variables in the data set. So like I said, if you see race, the description is race. It doesn't make any sense. If you see married, the description is married. It doesn't make any sense. If you see never married, the description is never married. Again, it doesn't make any sense. But I can change them by using the command label variable. Label variable. So I start. This time I'm going to use the short, the abbreviated form straight ahead. So I start by saying Laval, that's label variable. Then I select, for instance, marital or married. And in Stata, whenever you want to type a text, you have to put it in a quotation, in quotation marks, because Stata, like any other software, operates with figures. It operates with numbers. However, it has been designed in such a way that it can also operate with text. But whenever you are introducing a text, there is a way you have to inform the software. And the way you can inform it is to use the quotation marks, actually, or is for you to put those texts in a quotation mark. Then Stata really appreciate and understand that, okay, you are referring to text. Then it switches to the text function, how to manage text in its memory, and then work with the text that you actually put across to it. So over here, I have opened my first quotation mark, and then I type marital status of respondents. Okay, in the, let's say, community, something of this sort. So marital status, that is what I'm trying to be. Sorry, I pressed I rather tight bracket instead of quotation, a closing quotation mark. So you see, the moment you type a text and you correctly or you rightly put them in quotation marks, the color changes to red, this time not black as it is being shown here as a command name. It is being shown here as, in red, meaning that you are playing with a text. So I do this to give a brief description, a brief and detailed and informative description of the variable married. So I'm going to press my enter key and see what happened. So you see that it has changed from just married to what I just typed, marital status of the respondents in the community. You see that it's popping up here. Exactly what I typed here is being shown up here. So that is how the label variable does. If you want to attach a label description to a variable to make it more meaningful, or to make the users of your data understand what each variable stands for, you use the command lavar, or label variable. Okay, sometimes or most of the times we also have discrete variables or categorical variables in our data sets, and we normally use integers to assign or to represent their categories. So for instance, if I take religion, if I take religion, I can actually measure religion in three levels, where I have 1 for Christianity, 2 for Islam, and 3 for traditional. So there is a way you have to assign definition to these integers, because on the questionnaire you have instructed your data collectors or your field staff that if the person is a Christian, enter 1. If the person is Islam, enter 2, and that order. And so when the data comes, it is 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, that order, based on the choice or the religious affiliation of the respondent that you actually interview. And so when you come back to the office and you are managing the data, to make the categorization of these choices more meaningful, you have to label define them by assigning meanings to these integers that you use to represent each of the categories or each of the religious affiliation that you presented to your respondent to select from. And so to do that, we use a command called label define. Label define. You have to label define that, and then from there you can label assign that using another command called value label. But first of all, let's deal with the label definition. So let's go back. Let's use our command ed just to go back to the spreadsheet and pick up a variable that is categorical and then has no value label or label definition and then try to assign one. So if you come here, you will see that this is numeric, and this particular command is applicable to categorical numeric variable. So this is a dummy variable, a special form of categorical variable called dummy variable, where we have 0 perhaps standing for people who said no to never married, and 1 for people who said yes to never married. Okay, so if you look at this one, this particular variable, technically it doesn't make any sense. If I am not part of the survey, and again I do not have access to the questionnaire, it doesn't make any sense to me. I wouldn't know what the 0 stands for, neither will I know what the 1 stands for. And so what I have to do as a data or as a researcher managing this particular data is to assign label definition to these integers being used to categorize the variable never married. And this is how I do it. I come here and I type the command label or ladef, that is label define, and then that label definition I am going to use the variable name. Sorry, let me go back and pick the never married. That is what I said we should use. So never married, I use the same. I could have used a different name for my label definition, but whenever I am teaching data management, I advise my viewers or my trainees to always go by this principle. Let the label definition name be the same as your variable name, and you understand when I move on to the next command and the label, then you appreciate what I'm trying to say. Otherwise, there's always confusion as to which one comes first. Either the label definition comes first, or the variable name has to come first. People easily get confused unless you are an intermediate or advanced user of Stata, then you understand. But when you're a beginner, this confusion is highly inevitable, and so to overcome such a confusion, I always advise my beginner trainees that let your label definition name bear the same name as the variable for which you are actually creating this label definition for. And so over here I say 0, for instance, for no. Remember, it was 0 1 0 1 0 when we went to the spreadsheet, and then 1 for yes. So if you check here, I beg your pardon, if you check here, you can see that these are text, so I have put them in quotation marks. So what I'm telling Stata is that when assign no to the code or the integer 0 under never married variable, and then assigned 1 to those who choose the option yes, and put all these things under a label definition name called never married. Okay, after that, then I press my enter key. So it has generated it. It has created that label definition. It has created that label definition. But after it has created it, let's go back here. After it is created it, you see it is still not showing. It is still not showing because now I have to assign that label definition that I just created to the variable for which I created that particular label definition. And so to do that, I use another command called label value or laval. And then, like I said, just select this twice. You see why I select the label definition be the same as the variable name never married. Reason being that if I were to choose a different name here, then when I get here, if I am a beginner, the inevitable confusion is that I will be confused of which of the names will have to come first. Is it the variable name that will have to come first, or the label definition name that will have to come first? There is always confusion on the part of beginner users, and so my advice holds that when you are a beginner, always let your label definition name be the same as the variable name, and then you are okay to go. So I am now assigning the label definition to the variable never married because it is that variable that I created the label definition in the first place. Then I press enter. Again, it is also created, but I will not see any meaningful output here. What I've done will be evidential when I go back to the spreadsheet. So let me call this time, let me use BR. They do the same work. So you see now the 0 1 0 1 is changed, and Stata has assigned no to all zeros. Okay, Stata has assigned no to all zeros and has assigned yes to all the ones. Over here I cannot check because it is just the browse. So let me go back to the edit. Oops, I could have switched over from there, but we are beginners, so let me come back here and do it again. I can just call it from here, then I pick it from here. So this is edit. Now if I click, you see that the 0 which used to be here is now assigned no. Again, if you see the 0 is assigned no, and then the yes is assigned, or the 1 is assigned yes, and that order. Okay, so that is what the label define and the label value commands do. Okay, I can also query the system to give me the list of value labels. So we call that one is also called a directory. So I can say label directory. let's issue the command label directory and let's see what Stata does. So la dir, that is directory, and you see these are the value labels that Stata has in its memory. This is the one we just created. The never married, which we assign to the never married variable. This is what we just created. So you see that we have them. We have all of that, including what we just created here. And these value labels are for categorical variables and not continuous variables as age, but categorical variables, variables that are measured, for want of a better word, in levels. Where I cited an example like religion, where you can actually, or it is categorical, it is categorized as Christianity, Islam, or traditional, with one being Christianity, perhaps two being traditional, and three being Islam, whichever way you want to assign the categories. That is how it works. Okay, without wasting much time, this is what the label directory does. Let's move on to label lists, then we will know the difference. So la list, and I press my enter key. So you see that the label list does the same job as the label directory. The difference is that the label list gives details of, or detailed information of each of the value labels. So the never married that we just created, you will see that this is, we told stated that it should assign no to 0 and yes to 1, and so, or assign 0 to no and 1 to yes. So this is what we see over here. So here you will see that if you pick this one, this is the content. If you pick union label, this is the content. If you pick grade label, this is the content as well, and that order for all the value labels that we have in the dataset. Remember, I said that value labels are assigned to categorical numeric variables. So that is what we have over here. Okay, so apart from these label commands, there are other ones like label data. So you can also assign label to a data set. You can also copy a label, and you can also save a label. You can even use a new label to replace an already existing label. So you can actually do a lot with the label command, and therefore if you want to get more information, just as I did under the describe, just type help and type label as well, and the help window will pop up, or the help file will pop up, and you can read a lot. So you see label drop, you can even drop a label, you can even label, you can even use a command for label language and all that. So there is a lot that label command does whenever it comes to data management and analysis. It is a very powerful command, just like the edit and the browse. Very powerful. And the describe as well. They are very powerful. And as a beginner in Stata, or as a researcher, once you are familiar with the use of these data management commands, you are on your way to a good research piece of work. Okay, now I'm going to introduce you to also a way where you can navigate between string variables and numeric variables. String variables are mostly text, just as I said, that whenever you are typing, you use, or you are calling for a name of, or a content of such variables, you have to put them in quotation marks, because Stata by default operates by numeric figure, numeric values or numbers, and it is also designed to work with text. But for you to instruct it to work with text, it is ideal for you to actually use or put that text in quotation marks. Then Stata understands that you are feeding it with text information. Then it operates by its text function and gives you the result that you desire. Okay, so let's go straight by first of all looking at the command to string. okay, to string. So let's say I have a variable. Let me go back to the spreadsheet, ed. So I have age. Age is a non-categorical numeric variable. So it is non-categorical, and when a variable is numeric and non-categorical, we call it a continuous variable. So it is a continuous variable. You have 30, 43, 31, 20, 15, just like that. So it's continuous. And whenever, so this one, it is in numeric. That's why you see the color to be black. Now, maybe for whatever reason, I want to send it to a string. Okay, I want to just ask Stata to recognize it as text. That is what it means by you converting a numeric variable to string. You want Stata to recognize that particular numeric variable rather as text. And whenever you do that, it means you have converted that variable into a string variable. And so to convert a continuous variable like age into a string variable, I mean to just to tell Stata that acknowledge or recognize the variable age as text and not numbers, I use the command, and here I go back to the screen. I use the command to string, then I add the name of the variable age. Then I add the option generate. Remember, I told you whenever you are going to add an option, introduce a comma to end your command line before you introduce the option. So the option here is generate. Gen means generate. Remember, I told you that I am a fan of using short form of every command that I come across or I actually implement in Stata. So gen, then I type the new variable name. Whenever you do to string, it generates a new variable name, and so the new variable name must not have the same name, or the new variable must not have the same name as the old variable. Once you do that, you confuse the software, and so Stata will report an error message to you. And so to avoid that, embarrassment, what you do is that you choose a name a name for the new variable, which is totally different from that of the old variable. And so you can see that I am trying to pull a very fast one on the software. I'm still using age, but I just changed the first letter from lowercase to an uppercase letter, and that is all. Once I press my enter key, Stata has done the job, and this is the information it is giving me. Age generated as string. Okay, age generated as string 2. Later we'll deal with string variables, and therefore you get to know or understand what we mean by string 2, string so and so, and all that. Okay, so let's go back to the spreadsheet and see how our new string variable age is looking like. And therefore I type the command ed. Remember, we have just done that, and here you are. You see, so under this variable, or as far as this variable is concerned, Stata recognizes this new variable age as text and not numbers, as text. So any statistical computation that requires numbers, if you introduce this one, you are not going to get anything, because Stata is treating them as text and not numbers. However, the old age, the old variable called age, is still numeric. So this one you can perform some numeric statistical computation with it, because Stata recognizes it as numeric or a variable containing numbers. Over here, Stata sees it as variable that contains text, even though you see number 37 over there. And in Stata, when a variable is a string variable, the color is red. That is by default, unless you have changed your color preference under settings of Stata and assigned a different color to your string variable, where you tell Stata that, okay, this time if you see a string variable, don't use the red color, which you know by default, but assign this color, right? Rather, then Stata will assign a different color. But by default, whenever a variable is a string variable or is recognized as text in the mind of Stata, Stata gives it a special color red, and that is what we see over here. So that means that our desire to convert the numeric variable age to a string form has been very, very successful. Okay, let me go back to my data editor window. So over here you see race. When it is blue, it means that it is a numeric categorical variable, or it is categorical numeric variable, whichever way you want to call it. Okay, categorical numeric variable. So you can even see that there are some numbers assigned to these categories or these options. Okay, how about if I want to change it into a string? I don't want it in this format with these integers assigned to the categories, but I want it to be a string. Then in this regard, what I do is that I type the command encode. Because it is a categorical numeric variable, I use the command encode. Is it the command encode? I beg your pardon. I use the command decode, not encode. Decode. And so after typing decode, then I pick the variable name race. It's a categorical numeric variable. And then I also use the option generate, and perhaps maybe call it race. Just change the first letter, and then I turn it race. So I change the first lower case letter R to an uppercase letter R, and I press my enter key. Again, this is also done. Let's go back to the spreadsheet to pick it up and see how it looks like. This time it is shown at the extreme end here. So you see it has now changed. So when you come here now, you see that there's no integer or number assigned to these categories. It is purely text. So again, it's also appearing red, which means that Stata sees this one also as text. However, over here, Stata doesn't see this as text. It sees it as as numbers. So you can perform any numeric mathematical computation with this one, but you can't do exactly the same thing with this one because these are text in the memory of Stata, just like this one. Okay, so which means that if you are converting a categorical numeric variable into string, you use the command decode. However, if you are converting a numeric non-categorical variable into string, you use the command toString. You have to get the differences. It's very important. Get the difference straight and it will help you. Okay, how about assuming we have them in string and we want to send them to numeric? So now we have learned how to send them from numeric to string. What about the reverse? In doing the reverse, let's deal with the age first. Now, even though age is also recognized as text, however, it is numbers. And so to convert such string or text variables which are in numbers, okay, into numeric variables, what you do is that you use the command dstring, and then you type the variable name, so age. Then again, you can use generate and perhaps call it age1, or you can replace it. Over here you can use replace. Okay, maybe you don't want to keep the old one, just say replace and press your enter key, and here you are. They say age has all characters numeric replaced as byte. So let's go back to our edit, and here we are. You see it has now changed from red to black. So now it is numbers, and therefore whenever you ask Stata to perform any numeric statistical computation with it, it will accept it. However, at the initial stage where it was being recognized as text, Stata would have given you an error sign telling you that the variable you have chosen for me to do my statistical analysis with is not numbers, but it is text. Even though you see text 7 there, it was being recognized by Stata as text, but now it is being recognized as numbers, and therefore Stata can use it for any calculation that it wants to do for its user. Okay, so this is the command, the string. Let's do for the race. Again, because that one is purely letters or text, you don't use the same command as this. However, you use the command encode. Okay, the command that merely sneaked itself at the first instance, encode. Then you select that variable race, and here you say generate. Perhaps you can say race main, something like that. You know why I've used underscore? I've used underscore in the new name because in Stata, just like some other software packages, you don't space out variable names. If you want to space them out, you use underscore to space them out. Otherwise, you type them as one word. Okay, so take note of that, and it is going to help you a lot so that you avoid so much mistakes or errors. So whenever you want to space out a variable name, all you need to do is to just space it out by using underscore, and it is done by just pressing shift and the minus key on your computer, and it gives you that as well. So let me just press enter, and let's see what Stata gives us. So if I go to the spreadsheet using my edit command, there I see, you see, main. You see where it is here. So this is the old one, which was string. Now it is numeric. So if I come here, you see I have numbers assigned to it. So that is what you do whenever you want to navigate or transition from either string to numeric or numeric to string. These are the commands that you do. These are very powerful, basic data management commands that you need as a researcher for your data management activities. Later on, we shall learn how to automate some of these processes using these basic commands for your work. Okay, let me also introduce you to some other few basic commands, and then we end our lecture today. The next one is list. Okay, simply put, list, the list command. So the list command actually lists each variable, its content for each observation, each variable and its content for each observation. And so to demonstrate that, I just type the command list. I beg your pardon, list, and perhaps I press enter. The result doesn't look attractive at all. Okay, it's highly inefficient. You see, so just to explain to you, this is our observation 1 or our respondent number 1, and the ID code for that respondent is 1. The age of that respondent is 37. This is when we're practicing the transition of string and numeric variable, we just generated that. So it is still 37. Race, the person is a black. The person is not married and never married, no. And then grade, so in that order. So it does that for all the variables for each sample or case or observation or respondent. So if you come to respondent number 2, the same thing, all the responses that respondent provided for each of the variables or for each of the questions, you see all of them till the end. So that is how it goes, and this is very inefficient. Remember our data size or our sample size is almost 2000. So am I going to be pressing this one until I get to 2000? It is time consuming, waste of time, and highly inefficient. So I am going to terminate this one using this command. Watch here, hello, watch here. Okay, I'm using this command, and with this command I just click it, or I'm using this command, I just click it, break, and here you go. You see, you are telling Stata that I don't want you to continue, just pause or terminate this exercise, and then rather give you a new instruction for you to execute for me. And so Stata has terminated it. Now let's make the use of list more efficient, or quite efficient, before we move to more efficient. So quite efficiently, if you want to use list, you just list some few variables rather than making it general where it makes it more clumsy. This is even what we are seeing on the screen, though it's very bad, but I think it's even quite okay than large data sets with several variables. You wouldn't have actually understand anything that it would have presented if you were to do your list this way. So to make it quite efficient, I say list. Then I select some few variables that I'm interested in. So I say age, perhaps race, and then I press my enter key. So you see, it is giving me the age of every respondent in my data set, okay, with its associated race. So respondent number 1 is age 37 and he or she is a black. Respondent number 2, again age 37, he or she is a black. Look at respondent number 5, age 42, and he or she is white. So it goes on like that. Reason for me saying that quite efficient is that, again, I am doing it for all the sample that I have in my data set. So will I have to be pressing this like that up till 2000 plus? Again, it's also a waste of time, so I just terminate it. And rather, I come here and make it more efficient by subpopulating the data, picking a subsection of the data as far as these two variables are concerned, and list them and see how handy it is for you to actually explore the result or observe the result. So I come and I say list. Then I select the few variables. Let me pick my age and race again. I beg your pardon, I could have picked it then here, but perhaps I want to go through every step along the way for you to appreciate what I'm trying to demonstrate. And so list, age, race. Then this time I say in, for example, let's say the first respondent to the respondent number 200, and I press my enter. So it is more efficient because I've told Stata that give me a list, okay, of the content of these two variables for each observations within the range observation 1 to 200. And so this is what I have. This is what I have, you see. So it's more handy, more efficient, and you tend to have, a critical look or observation of the result that you have. So that is what list does. Again, you can also abbreviate it by just using li, or perhaps you can also, let me terminate it again. You can also use just lis, whichever you want to use, you are free to use, okay, because Stata actually acknowledges the two as being representing one command. Okay, remember I also told you that we will use a command to request for that form or that kind of note which is attached to our data set. When I used the command describe, one of the general information that I saw or I had was that the data has note attached to it. What kind of note is attached to it? For us to look at the note attached to it, we use the command note, okay, note. And when I use that command note, I just type note and I press enter. This is the note attached. What does it mean, or what does it say? It says 1988 data extracted from national longitudinal of young women who were ages 14 to 24 in 1968. This data set is the result of extraction and processing by various people at various times. So it continues like that and tells you that for more information, you visit this website. So if you are interested, you just copy this one and put them in your internet browser, and there you go. It takes you there for you to have a look at the more information that it is actually referring you to. So that is what note does. So this is note for the entire data set. How about variables? I could have done that. Should it happen that some variables have note attached to it? I don't think some variables have note attached, but let's just go through the procedure, the demonstration. So I can just type notes and then select a variable. Let's say married. Let's see. I want to know whether the data, already the owner of the data actually attached a note to the variable, married. Okay, there's no note, and so you see there's no information provided. Unlike this one, you see over here there is note attached to it. So this is the note. Over here in selecting marriage, there is no note attached to it, and therefore I see nothing over there. So that is how the command note also works. let's look at how you can also play around some Mason, how you can manage some Mason data. Okay, let's play around how you can explore some Mason data in in your quest to manage your data set. And so the first command is called, and if you have not, if you this command, the Mason, is not already installed in your Stata, it's an it is a user written command that you have to actually install on the version that you have. And so if you don't have it, don't worry, I'm just typing a line here that can help you actually get it installed in the twinkle of a second. And before you use the command I'm just going to type here, you first of all have to connect your computer to an internet source, because if the computer is not having an internet connection, the command is not going to work. Stata will just show you an error message. But once it is connected to the internet, if you issue the command that I'm going to give you, you are good to go. So the command is ssc install, then you type the name Masons, and perhaps if you want the updated version of that command, you just add replace, then you enter, you press the enter key. Once you are connected to the internet source, as soon as you press the enter key, it will begin to do internet searching, and within a twinkle of a second it just installs the package onto the version you have on your computer. And so just to demonstrate the consequence of you not connecting internet and just wanting to use, what the message will be, you see, so it tells you a host not found. And so this is the page that the system wanted to visit, to pick the command Masons, the user rating command Masons, and then install it in the version that you are using. But because I am not connected to the internet at the moment, because we are in a lecture, this is the error message that it is giving. It says it's not a valid URL, or could not be contacted, or it's not a Stata download site, has no Stata .talk file. These are technical terms that as we go along, I will be introducing quite some few of them to you for you to actually appreciate them. So if you don't have the command that I'm going to use now, anytime you don't have certain commands on your machine, you either use this command line, or you can also use find it. Okay, then you type the name of the command, perhaps Masons, and then you press enter. Okay, again, because I'm not connected to the internet, see what pops up. But what this command would have done for you is that it doesn't tell you this message. It doesn't do the installation straight ahead. It's rather based on the command you type that you should find, that Stata should find. Stata would have quickly done an internet search and pull out all that the command you have requested, in addition to all other commands that are very close or are similar to the command that you want to install on your package. Okay, so that is just by the way. Let's go straight to the Masons, and then we'll bring our class to an end. And so for the Masons, the first I have is Masons reports. That's the first command, Masons report. So I am telling Stata, like, give me a report of what the Mason information you have in the data set. And so this is what it's giving me. So the variable grade, okay, has two Mason information. It means that two of the respondents did not respond to it. So either the question wasn't applicable to them, or they simply decided to refuse to answer, or perhaps they don't know. So it was left blank or something like that. So if you take industry as well, you have 14 Masons, and it runs through, with the highest being 368. That is for union and that order. Okay, the next Mason, so this actually gives you information about about Mason information, a quick report. Okay, so Mason report gives you a quick report. I can also use the command Mason list. Okay, Mason list, and then I just press enter. Mason list is not recognized. Whoosh. Okay. I made a mistake and I omitted my S. I always miss it. Okay, so now that I have attached my S, here I am. So remember, this command doesn't accept abbreviation. Okay, it doesn't accept abbreviation. Otherwise, even without the S, it should have given me the result I wanted. But because it doesn't accept, for want of a better word, shorthand, it just simply refused to give me the response by telling me that this one I don't know this kind of command. Okay, but once I added the S, so okay, is that what you are referring to? You nearly confused me. Then it went back and gave me the answer. Okay, that's just by the way. So if you take grade, you will see all the entries. Okay, for so these are the respondents in the data set that have missing information. Okay, respondent number 3 up to the last one. So it goes on like that. Respondent number 3, sorry, up to the so the first person that has missing is respondent number 3, and the missings are found here. Or they responded to all these ones. However, when they got here, they simply refused to answer, or perhaps that question was not applicable to them and therefore they had to jump over it. Okay, so again, I'm not interested in the scrolling for all of that, so I just terminate it. Okay, so that is the command for lesson variables that are having this information across respondent or by respondent. Okay, I can also do Mason tabulate. Okay, so I can tabulate the Mason information by saying Mason's tabulate. As for tablet, I can just say tab. Okay, and this is what I get. So it is telling me that in the entire data set, okay, out of 2,246, I am having 1,848 having no, in fact, they don't have missing information. It means that they responded to the instrument fully. Okay, so there is no missing information there. However, if I come to this section, out of 2,246, 384 of them have one missing information. They either refuse to answer one question, or that particular question wasn't applicable to them, or they simply did to, so they didn't actually do anything about it in terms of giving a response. So that is how it goes. Okay, that is how it goes. The last but not the least, oh okay, I have the last but two. Okay, so we have that is which is the next one, Mason tag. Okay, so I can generate a variable in the data set which is coded in a certain way when a particular observation has a missing information, and otherwise if an observation has no missing. So I just say Mason's tag, then I say generate. Okay, then I say maybe miss, something like that. So I press enter. You see checking Mason in all variables. It is telling that 398 observations were missing. Okay, so let me edit miss and see. So this is what we have. So it means that all those coded one, it means that they have some missing information in there, and all those that were coded 0, it means that there's no missing information. And so you can tabulate this particular result. We have not gotten there yet. So, basic statistics, we have not gotten there yet, but let's just use one here. So tabulate, you see that the same result that this gave us, okay, Mason's tab, is the same result we have here. So the trick here is that if you want to be more efficient and faster in exploring Mason data, in terms of presenting a table like this, it is more appropriate to go by this Mason's tab. Okay, because the steps that we went by, first of all, tagging, generating a variable through Mason's tag before we did the tabulation, these two steps is handled at once by just saying Mason style. So you don't need to use this particular, approach. Okay, it makes you spend a lot of time, for no reason. It's better you go by this since the results are the same. Okay, then we have another one, or there are two. They are very, very key. Okay, very, very key. The first one is Mason's drop vars. So what I'm going to tell Stata whenever I use that command is that drop all the variables that do not have even a single entry. In other words, they have all the observations or respondent refusing to answer. So it is empty. There is no response in that. In that case, that variable is redundant. It is useless. You don't need it. So I'm going to tell Stata to perform that activity for me. Should we have a variable in this data set that we are using where there is no, everything is missing. Okay. So let's see. I have Mason's drop var. Beg your pardon. Mason's drop var. And then I go ahead and press my enter. Oh, so sub command, I beg your pardon. So I have to add my S. I guess I omitted some letter here. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So this one, the first one, it was illegal for me because I should have added S here. So this is a signal for you to know that, at this stage, abbreviations are not entertained. Okay, are not entertained. And so you have to be very careful. But this one is not an error. Okay, it is telling me that what I am asking it to do, I'm going to lose some part of the data because it's going to end up dropping some variables, and therefore it is warning me that if you ask me to do that and then I do it, you are going to lose some data content, and therefore the structure of your data is going to change. So if you want me to still do it, then give me the option false, and then I'll do it. That's what Stata is telling me. So I'm going to do that by adding the option false. Okay, so now it has obeyed the command. So what it did was that it checked all the variables, each variable, just to see that any of them was empty. It's totally missing. There's no information under it at all. And when it did that, it say, look at this now, it say no variables qualify that condition. The condition is that drop all variables that are completely, empty. Every observation or every respondent didn't answer to that question. But, thanks be to God, we have all our variables having some number of entries and some others missing. Okay, and so in total, you see this one, say 398 observations with missing values. Okay, however, no variable, qualify for this condition. Okay. Now let's take a look at the last command for this lecture, which is Mason's drop ops. Okay, so here what it does is that, again, I'm telling Stata that this time not with respect to variables, but with respect to respondents or observations. Any observation who did not respond to any of the questions that were introduced, to him or her. And therefore, if you look at that respondent, everything that is for each and every variable is missing. Okay, so I'm telling Stata that identify those ones and then drop all of them. Again, look at what it's going to tell me. It's going to give me the same warning. Okay, false option. So it's telling me that again your data structure is going to change if I do that. If you are still convinced that I'm supposed to do that, then signal me by asking me to force, by telling me to do it by force. And so I come here and I introduce the option false. Then I press enter. Again, no observations qualify. Okay, no observations qualify. So that is what Mason, how to explore Mason, data in Stata during your data management activities. In our second video, we will continue from here and we'll get to know how to even recode or how to manage missingness in your raw data. Thank you so much for your time. Remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel and then follow every video that comes. And as long as you work with me, you become a pro. I'm taking my time in each of the lectures to introduce things to you step by step. Thanks for your time. Take care of yourself and remember, be you. Bye-bye.